Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and I'm continuing my little mini-series here dealing with armored warfare, and this is the Russian T-90. Now, I've only unlocked the base camo on this tank. I haven't put any higher layers of camo, so the tank looks, basically like a plain white. I haven't really put anything on it yet, but the T-90 is actually a very good tank. Now, yesterday we were dealing with the Challenger, which basically is a fortress with a decent gun. Whereas this tank, especially towards the sides, has much weaker armor, but it has a much harder hitting gun when you fire heat shells out of it. Now, heat shells are a little bit tricky because you really have to secure your shots. You have to be very careful with your shots. And that sometimes can be kind of a downside to it. I mean, as you can see, I'm getting fairly decent hits out of it, and you're going to see some much bigger hits coming out of this gun. But sometimes the amount of time that you have to spend, there's a big one, kind of finding your shots and finding the weak points where you can penetrate the armor, especially with a heat shell, because the penetration isn't that high. It can sometimes be a detriment to your gameplay rather than strictly firing APCR, and I've certainly had some very high scoring games in this tank firing nothing but APCR, but that's just because I don't really have to work as hard to secure my shots, and I can just kind of I can rely more on the DPM to kind of carry the damage. And I've had some very solid results with this tank, and so, I mean, it really it depends on your style of gameplay and how you want to play it. I mean, you can play it either way, but if you just choose to fire nothing but APCR out of this tank, you're not going to really suffer. It's still a very hard-hitting tank, much more so than the Challenger, and a little bit more mobile than the Challenger as well. In fact, probably a lot more mobile, to be honest. But because of that weak side armor, I tend to play this tank a little bit more conservatively, so even though I'm getting these big hits in, I'm not going to be getting a lot of subsequent big hits. So the damage in this round isn't going to be that high, but I think that's more a question of how I was playing this round rather than the potential of this tank, because I'm sure there are people out there who can just rock 20,000 damage rounds like nobody's business with this tank, and I've gotten up, I think I've gotten up around 18,000, 19,000 damage rounds with this thing before I've had to, reload the ammo. And it's been a pretty solid performer, and I'm not like disappointed in this tank at all. Now, of course, there are certain improvements that make this tank much more livable to play, and that is, of course, the I believe it's the Kalina fire control that you can unlock with this. That is a godsend to this tank, because otherwise the aim time is just it's pretty brutal. But overall, it's a pretty solid tank and fairly well defended from the front as well. Now, it's no Abrams and it's no Challenger, but it's still very strongly defended and a very good tank to play. And I mean, if you grind all the way up to this thing, you won't be disappointed. Though the Russian line is a little bit more difficult to grind through. Harder hitting, yes, but the weak side armor on Russian tanks can sometimes, it can be very frustrating. And especially the early, like the T-62 and the T-72 aren't really that strong, so it can be, you'll have your frustrating days with those tanks. But in PVE mode, the T-90 is very solid, and I can't wait to see the T-90 MS. Now, PVE has been, it's been in this kind of basic mode for quite some time, and we're kind of looking forward to it being, kind of expanded. Now, we don't have any real details on how far that's going to go and what the exact nature of those expansions are going to be, but, I like to remain positive and have high hopes about it. But hopefully time will tell. What I would really like to see, to be honest, is to get off of these arena style maps and to get into like zones, sort of like let's say if there was a giant open desert map, and I'm not talking about a kilometer by a kilometer or 1,500 meters by 1,500 meters. I'm talking a map that would be like about 20 kilometers to a side. You know, something huge, something where you would have the sense of actually driving your tank through the world. Like, you could go pick up your tank out of the garage, you could go to this zone, and you could do separate missions within the zone, sort of like these missions that I don't know if you ever played the old game Warhammer Online, how there were sometimes these random missions that would spring up in areas, and you and whoever, whatever players were in the area could do those missions together, and then you could just break up and go do whatever, and the mission would just automatically score you depending on how you did when the event started. Something like that would be really, really cool in a game like this, and it would certainly be something that would set this game apart, because, I mean, there already is like an arena tank game, and I think that with PVE mode, it's a very good foot in the door for Obsidian Entertainment to start taking this to someplace very interesting and creating a game that I think would really attract a lot of players. Because even though, you know, World of Tanks is certainly a decent game, after a while, I mean, you just get sick of the arena matches. Certainly I did, and I kind of wanted something more. I kind of wanted to take my tank out into the world and drive it around and just kind of explore the world with my tank, much the same way, you know, when I would be playing World of Warcraft, I'd be exploring areas or zones in the map with my characters. I would like to be able to do that with a tank, and I'm hoping that Obsidian Entertainment is going to take this game to a certain extent in that direction and let us, you know, sort of get out of these kind of scripted missions and move into an open zone and let us find our own adventures with our armored vehicles. And, you know, just have to go to like a little arms depot in the area, like a little mission hub, reload our ammo, repair our tank, and then go back out and do it again. I think that that would be really interesting, and certainly you know, an area like that, you could host some very interesting events where all of a sudden, you know, the NPAA or the Lions of Nequiel or whoever the, you know, the faction is that would be in that zone, all of a sudden launches an invasion, and all the players that are in that zone got to kind of zoom up into that area and help fight that invasion off. I think that would be a really cool way for this game to really set itself apart and to give itself some long-term legs that you know, frankly, just an arena combat game like World of Tanks doesn't have, because eventually you get bored of the same old all the time. Anyways, enough of that. Let's look at the end plates and see how we did. Now, granted, these weren't the best results, but you know what? I was playing a little bit conservatively, and I was, you know, I was very conscious of the fact that I was recording this round, and so I was being probably a little bit too careful. But it is a good tank. It is very mobile and very hard hitting, and if that's your thing, then you're not going to be disappointed.